Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nastaprai Abhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Reading from Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 titled Karma Yoga, verse 16. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati haya aghayurindriya rama mugham partha sabjivati. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati haya aghayurindriya rama mogham partha sajivati. Word by word translation. Evam, thus, pravartin, established by the Vedas, chakram, cycle, na, does not, anuvartayati, adopt, iha, in this life, ya, one who, aghayu, whose life is full of sins, indriya arama, satisfied in sense gratification, mogham, uselessly, partha, O son of Pritha, Arjuna, sa, he, jivati, lives. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin, living only for the satisfaction of the senses. Such a person lives in vain. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Mammonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, the human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization in either of the three ways, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalist who are above vice and virtue. For those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above mentioned cycle of yajna performances. There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the whole world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajna, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if by performing yajna one doesn't become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not therefore limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namo. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Shwapadantikam Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Uttapadakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakha Vitamsha. हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमो. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak on this very, very powerful verse. Here Krishna is explaining, the Karma Kanda and how it dovetails into Karma Yoga gradually. And here there are certain literals which are very, very critical in understanding this verse. There is a word Krishna uses here. He says chakram, and we're going to dwell more on that. And then Krishna is saying aghayur. Aghayur means those whose life is full of sins. And then he is referring to Arjuna as Partha, as the son of Pritha, or the son of Kunti Maharani, whose other name is Pritha. So we'll try to discuss about these three things. And then Aghayur, whose life is full of sins. And there we need to slightly refer back to our previous verses. And in the previous verse, Krishna, in 3.12, 4 verses before, Krishna referred to those people who are not paying taxes after using this mother nature for their different things are called thieves. And now in 16 he is going a step ahead, trying to say that those people are not just thieves, they are aghayu. That means their life is full of sins. So as you know, when you have your tax season is coming out, and anytime you do not end up filing taxes, or you do not file tax properly, you underpay taxes, then Uncle Sam will come and get you. And they generally give a lot of challenges if you do not pay taxes properly. So here, Uncle Sam gives a lot of trouble if you don't pay taxes. But in the mother nature, there is Father Shyam Sundar. Father Shyam is there. And if you do not pay taxes, we all know what the consequences are. And to put the respective regulations, Krishna is laying out the rules and regulations. Father Shyam Sundar is saying it will be full of sins if you do not go and live within the confines of this cycle, chakra, we are going to discuss today about. So we should all recognize the fact that we have a material body. We will decay someday, 60, 70, 80 years. But we have something in our heart which is not material, which is spiritual, which is the soul and the super soul. So the soul which exists alongside our heart is spiritual, and it is living in a area which is not conducive to it. Say, for example, you have a fish. Fish is living so beautifully in river, in water. So you take the fish out and put it in nice milk and nice lassi, all very opulent things. The fish is going to have a lot of trouble. Fish will eventually pass his body, because the constitutional position of fish is when he is in water. Likewise, the spiritual soul in us is living in a material body. Whenever we have, some of these transplants, whether you have prosthetics or you have where, they ampute and start putting different mechanical parts in the body, or if they put a pacemaker in our heart for some reason, the body takes a lot of time to adjust. And we do all kind of chiropractor to get that adjusted, that material part in the body. But we have a special guest, which is part and parcel of the Supreme, which is the soul, and we do not take any care of it. We do not do any chiropractor, we do not nurture it, we just let it out, we enjoy with the illusory energy, and then we forget about it. And when you think about Uncle Sam giving us a lot of trouble, because if you don't do the 1040 properly, likewise, Father Sham, what he is going through when he knows that we are not taking due care in our hearts in trying to nurture that particular thing, which is 1 by 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair, which is called soul, and we are not nurturing it. So it's a, and also we should recognize, Prabhupada mentions when he talks about this 3.16, that, say for example, a tree is a huge tree, and the tree has, thousands and millions of leaves. If you start putting water in each of these 10,000 leaves, it's not going to help the tree. The tree needs water in the roots. And Prabhupada also talks about, we have 9 orifices in our body, and it's called Navadwara to our, and actually this 9 holes in our body has to be used for the right reason. You cannot eat in any orifice which is other than your mouth, because the physical conditioning of the body has been made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in such a way that we all coexist together. But when we try to misuse the eating not through the mouth example, or putting water in the leaves rather than the root, then it is very difficult. Like, say for example, if the hand says, hey, the mouth and tongue, they're relishing the cake always, and I, being the hand and finger, I'm not going to take the cake to the mouth. And when they do not take the cake to the mouth, they stay undernourished and they become frail. So the only way, we all know, is to absorb and prolong our natural relationship, is to understand what the Supreme Personality of Godhead is saying. And there is a very strong reference to Lord Krishna, and he is referred as Tirthapada. And the reason why I wanted to discuss that is I wanted to lay down some principles for this discussion. So Mother Devahuti has a son, his name is Kapila Dev. But Kapila Dev is nothing but, he is no one other than the Lord himself. But Kapila Dev was more knowledgeable. Even if Mother Devahuti's son, Kapila Dev is much younger to Mother Devahuti, but he was a bright person, and he is the Supreme Person. And there are interaction between them, and sometimes when strong personalities meet and discuss about them, now after millions of years later, we still discuss about those discussions, right? Likewise, here Mother Devahuti is referring to Krishna as Tirthapada. That means where all the holy places are coming from the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. And if you are staying and taking care by doing devotional service to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, then there is no need to go and do anything. There's no need to do any renunciation or anything for that matter, because Lord's lotus feet is all we need. So with that, let's dive deep into what Krishna is saying in this verse in terms of sacrifice, or the circle of sacrifice. He uses the word chakram, right? We went through it. Chakra There are many chakras in Bhagavad Gita. You may have heard about, the cycle of repeated birth and death, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. That's another one cycle. But in this cycle, Krishna is referring to the circle of sacrifices. And he's saying, anybody who doesn't follow this circle of sacrifices, he is sinful. He is not just a thief. He is sinful. So the extent of punishment from Uncle Sam, if it is X, then this is way more than X. That's why Father Sam is much more potent than Uncle Sam. And here in this circle of sacrifice, he says that, which is essentially what this chapter is all about, prescribed duties. Karma is prescribed duties, right? So we'll start with prescribed duties. And then based on the Vedas, which was documented, the prescription, and the Vedas comes from the Supreme Lord, and from the Supreme Lord we have the living beings, and they subsist on food grains which are produced by rains. And then where does rain come from? Rain comes from yajna. Yajna should not be just misconstrued as homam. It is also homam. Also, it means sacrifices. And once from the sacrifices, rains, food grains, human beings, they offer their obeisances and do services to the Supreme Lord. And from Veda, which has actually come from Lord's mouth, and then that cycle, right? It's a clockwise cycle in this case, or anti-clockwise cycle in this case. Essentially, the prescribed duties are born from the performance of yajna sacrifices, and then it's prescribed within Vedas to do all this, individual sacrifices, and then Supreme Lord is pleased. And so on. So this cycle of sacrifice is critical to this verse. Rains, when evaporation happens, rains falls. Then there is food grains. Food grains are taken by human beings, and human beings offer devotional service to the Supreme Lord, and which has actually come from Vedas. And this prescribed duty, the karma kanda, dovetailing into karma yoga, is a prescription for this chakra, which Lord Krishna is explaining. So the purpose of human life is to please the Supreme Lord. It is not with a intent that the Lord is enforcing that, but Lord is suggesting that you just take one step, I'll take 10 steps to help you. So the purpose of human life is to please the Supreme Lord, because we are part and parcel of the Supreme. Aham bija pradapita, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that I am seed-giving father of all beings, and the best process is to please the Supreme Lord by unalloyed and undeviated devotional service. And in this age of Kali, Sankirtan Yajna, chanting the holy names of the Lord, or discussing about the Lord based on the 9 processes of bhakti is recommended. And in this age, the mantra is the Maha Mantra for this age of Kali. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, if you see this verse, if we kind of try to go back and look at it, so Krishna is saying the sacrifice cycle is recommended, and if the sacrifice cycle is not followed, then there are consequences, there are sinful reactions. So anytime we have any work, the work gives us some money and we either spend or enjoy on it, So that, as you can see, it has consequences. You did some work, but in order to think that you are the proprietor of that work, there are two things here. You have the work and you have the effect of work. Once the effect of work is consumed by you, you are pretty much staying in the karma cycle, and likewise, and that karma cycle gets you attracted to karma bandhana. And that's where Radhanath Maharaj so nicely once said that when you're doing devotional service, do the devotional service with detachment. Once you get attached to this devotional service, then, say for example, you are making pizza, for example, and once you are making pizza in the temple, but if you stay with the attachment to your devotional service, once that service of making pizza goes away from you to somebody else, your devotional service takes a hit. And that is where our devotional service has to be done with an intent that whatever you are doing is part and parcel of Krishna, and Krishna is multidimensional, right? You can do anything for Krishna. There are so many things. You can sing for Krishna, you can do art for Krishna, you can write for Krishna, you can speak for Krishna, you can hear Krishna Katha. So there is no end to doing devotional service to Krishna. Whether you are speaking or you are hearing, your senses are engaged in the service of Krishna. And that is where it is not recommended to get attached to devotional service, rather than getting a habit for doing devotional service with humility. And that is where Lord Krishna is referring to Arjuna as son of Pritha. And why does he refer to him as son of Pritha? Sometimes Krishna refers to Arjuna as Gudakesha, because he has a message to tell him about his archery skills he practiced in the night, curtailing sleep, curtailing ignorance. And here Krishna is referring to Arjuna as Pritha, because Maharani Kunti epitomized sacrifice. All her life is filled with sacrifice, and that's the reason why in Kunti Maharani Kunti's prayers, Maharani Kunti never wanted material happiness, because the material happiness will take her away from the thought of the Supreme. And that's why Lord Krishna in this verse is exemplifying that quality of Maharani Kunti by referring to Krishna as Pritha. So three things: the sacrifice chakra, the cycle of sacrifice, and the effect, the cause being the cycle of chakra, and the effect of full of sins, which is even worse than stealing, as discussed by Lord Krishna in 3.12, and then referring to Arjuna by exemplifying her mother. And that is where it's a perfect segue to our subsequent thing. We wanted to discuss about the sacrifice for the current age. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 3rd chapter, verse 52, which you may have heard before, it's mentioned, Kritayad dhayato Vishnum Tretayam yajato makai dwapare paricharyam kaloto dharikirtana. That means, in the age of Satyuga, Valmiki Rishi, he did meditation for 60,000 years. At that time, in the age of Satyuga, people were living for 100,000 years. Out of 100,000 years, 60,000 years Maharshi Valmiki spent in meditation. In the Dwapara Yuga, when the standards were lower than Satyuga, which was a age of meditation, people started doing sacrifices, the so-called yajnas in Treta Yuga. The impurities were less, the ingredients were pure, the verses, as you can see, we are fumbling with these verses. At the time they were very pure in uttering the mantras, and they were performing sacrifices. And in Dwapara Yuga, they were serving the lotus feet by Archanam. And with everything in decline in this age of Kali, the chanting of the holy name, even if this yuga has all the challenges in life, even if this yuga is a very inferior, a lot of people read, undocumented, inappropriate things here, read the aspects, the interactions are very contaminated. But still, this yuga has a lot of power. Like, say, for example, you may have gone for some courses in your prior life. So there'll be some courses which are so tough, and the teacher has not given you enough time, and the conditioning you may have encountered is in your college, there was a break or something, and you are not in the college. So because of the circumstances, sometimes what the teacher does is the teacher says, hey, you can write the exam open book. So the standards are way less. And what happens? Once he makes the exam open book, you end up doing very, very well. And also, that helps. So even if Kali Yuga has so much of imperfections, but Krishna has given us this open mantra to us, exactly like how the professor has given us this open book exam. It's very simple, and the only way in this age of Kali is Hari Kirtana. That means only by chanting the names of Hari can give us that love for Godhead, which is not possible in other yugas. 60,000 years Valmiki Maharshi meditated. Can't do it now. Likewise, can do sacrifices with good ingredients and uttering of the mantra in a such a potent way. Dwapara Yuga can do the archanam, which in Dwarka, in various different places, people used to conduct. But the best part is, in Kali Yuga, Lord has given us a very easy method, very simple method. And you can only receive the simple method if your thought process is simple. Because generally, it is very difficult to conceive that how can this Mahamantra, these people are calling it Mahamantra, is enough to give us the spiritual benefits. It's not easy for people to understand. And likewise, it is very easy for people to understand. So when the South Indian Brahmin, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met the South Indian Brahmin, he was, holding the Bhagavad Gita upside down, like this. He was holding the Bhagavad Gita upside down, and tears were coming from his eyes. He didn't read Bhagavad Gita. The South Indian Brahmin did not read Bhagavad Gita because he cannot read Bhagavad Gita, and his superiors were always making fun of him that he, being a Brahmin, cannot read. But he was having tears from his eyes. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw, he asked, "Why are you crying?" Then the South Indian Brahmin said, holding the Bhagavad Gita exactly how upside down, he said, thinking that the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, instead of fighting in the battle, choose to become a driver of the chariot of his devotee gets me crying. So he has understood this. He has not read anything. He has understood that. But in this age, there's so much of complications that we cannot understand that this 16 round of chanting of this holy name on a daily basis can help us purify and get us to the other side and grow that love for the Supreme. So it's very easy to understand if we choose to accept this, and it's equally very difficult to understand if we choose not to accept it. So the education, thinking that having great education will align us in thinking and accepting this process is not like that. But slowly and slowly, in prominent institutions in here in India, people are recognizing this process of higher taste which is put forth by His Divine Grace, and this chanting of holy name, which is a bona fide process instituted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when he has done that, people are slowly coming on board, but it is very easy to understand, and the only conclusive process, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 12.3.52, is in this age of Kali, simply chanting the holy name is enough. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gati Annatha. So Krishna is saying in a very nice way that he is extending his recognition for punishment from a thief to a person with life is full of sins. And that's why unless we try to dovetail our activities in the form of any form of sacrifice, whether the sacrifice in the form of contributing to the temple, or doing our dose of morning hearing during Brahma Muhurta, or discussing the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, where it makes it gets everybody feel blissful, exactly like how the personalities, when they were discussing about the Supreme, were feeling blissful about when they were discussing. Like nowadays in the morning, we're going through the Vidur Maitreya Sambad, which is so astounding as to how Vidurji is going to meet Maitreya Muni and what transpired between them. And that gives happiness to the people who are hearing. So when this discussion about the Supreme happens, sometimes if you refer that in India we have 330 million Deva Devis, and people are willing to follow all of them. So we have to recognize that when in the beginning, when these sages, they were trying to tell about the glories of the Supreme Purna Purushotam Krishna, who has everything, who has the 5 opulences plus the 6th opulence of renunciation. The aspect of renunciation cannot be understood by the audience in front of this rishis and munis. This audience had craving, had desire for money, for benefits. And at that time, if the munis and rishis at the time would propose this topic of renunciation, the austerities, the audience is not going to listen. So, if you see historically, our munis and rishis, in order to imbibe that element of spiritual alignment have often mentioned about the different devas and devis who are like the head of the department under the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But that is when the people have taken it to a different level. They think that that's where it ended. But Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita gives that element of linkage between these head of the departments with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it is not how the Vedas, Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, which is presented to the audience. It's how people have caught onto it and moved on. So we cannot defy or undermine the importance of the head of the departments like this 330 million devas and devis. But at the same time, as the knowledge get enhanced with these association, and as people understand the different verses the Lord is speaking, or in Srimad Bhagavatam there are discussions, then as Prabhupada is saying, just by following the mundane principle is not enough in this verse. So we have to transcend them. So it is not just this moral codes of asking for benefit from Lord Ganesh or getting some educational benefit from Mother Saraswati. It is beyond this point of moral codes, and that is when we have to transcend. So the way it was proposed, the 330 million Deva Devis we have, is not with an intent to kind of give a democratic process of spiritual leadership, but to at least make them understand, even if you have desires, there are ways it can be satisfied by the head of the departments. So in Krishna consciousness, in spiritual activities, there is not a single answer which is correct all the time. And that is where we have to go beyond the modes which are proposed to us and try to understand that from the context of that verse itself. Because here Krishna is saying we have to perform yajna to get rain. But that yajna can be constituted differently based on how you ask a question. But in the confines of this verse, we have to stay relevant with this chakra or the cycle of sacrifice which we discussed. And we have to answer the question in the confines of this verse that the rains are produced by the yajna. So with that, I'd like to end here. I'd like to open up for some comments, because your comments and context helps all of us, and it gives a better meaning to this this discussion we had today. So once again, thank you so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.